Look, there is no denying it. When Pokémon Scarlet and Violet came out, it wasn't exactly the best of time for me. In fact, it wasn't a good time for many people. Pokémon centers looked rough, Koraidon or Miraidon looked laggy, there were a lot of glitches, and textures didn't load that well. When I started experiencing these glitches, I thought that this was a situation where Game Freak would realize it and patch the game, and all of these things would go away. I was like, there was just no way in my mind that this was intended to be the final product. In fact, I found Pokemon Scarlet and Violet so unplayable that I actually stopped playing Pokemon for a while and instead focused on YouTube. I played half of the Teal Mask DLC and I didn't even bother with the Indigo disc. So imagine my surprise when the Switch 2 got announced and came out with all these graphical updates. With these updates also came a free upgrade to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So I found myself asking, was I really going to give these games another shot? These games that have failed me time and time again, and even drew me away from playing Pokemon for a while. I mean, I just had to see for myself, right? And oh boy was I surprised. The once laggy, hard to watch game became such a pleasant Pokemon experience. Anyway, what happened here? Why was there such a disconnect? Was I just being picky before? What exactly happened between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2? And what does this mean for the future of Pokemon on the Switch 2 and beyond? I think that Pokemon for a lot of people is about living in the world, battling alongside your Pokemon, and just feeling like you're a part of the universe. Okay, so picture this. Imagine you were given an ice cream cone one day, aka Pokemon Red and Blue, and over the years, people added different flakes, sprinkles, and sauces, and different flavors to the ice cream. That's the Pokemon franchise adding new things or experimenting with different stuff. Then imagine one day you were given a different ice cream cone, but this one is covered in dirt. No matter how good the ice cream tastes, it just doesn't look good. This is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. You can pick away at the dirt and see that the ice cream on the inside looks pretty good and actually tastes good too, but there is so much dirt that covers it, it's not even worth your while. I just wish when Scarlet and Violet came out that the super good and delicious ice cream cone was seen. No lag, no unfinished textures, nothing that would interrupt the ice cream. Just buttery smooth gameplay. However, that wasn't the case. But let's not just focus on the negatives here. I want to focus on the positives and what these games did right and what this means for the future of Pokemon on the Switch 2 and beyond. Because trust me, there's a lot. This is the bare minimum. This is the worst, in theory, a Pokemon game should ever look. Because Pokemon was improving pretty dramatically in terms of style from Gen 1 to 5, with Gen 5 looking the best of the 2D era games. With the release of Pokemon X and Y, the 3D era began. They effectively started from scratch, and I think every game since then has progressively looked better. However, there are some Switch games that look better than others. For example, Legends Arceus and the Let's Go games have stronger artistic choices, therefore looking better. But the step from Sword and Shield to Scarlet and Violet felt a bit odd. They were trying to do too much. They were trying to finally elevate from the idea of the open world section of the wild area into a whole game. In between, they kind of took a little jump in the form of Legends Arceus. However, Scarlet and Violet was that big leap. It was the future of Pokemon. By the way, I should say here that I do have my criticisms of Scarlet and Violet. The intro section is far too long, and there are some missteps in terms of story and progression. But I think that these mistakes were less noticeable when the game as a whole looked pretty bad. But now with the Switch 2, the games actually look good. Stuff like frame rate, lag, and late unpolished textures were really noticeable in the Switch 1. This added some charm to the game. This made it memorable. Maybe not for the best reasons, but it does. There are still many gameplay refinements and options that can be made moving forward, but with the power of the Switch 2, anything's possible. After all, they turned Scarlet and Violet around. I'm sure that the way to play Legends ZA is going to be much better, much crisper, and overall much more enjoyable. I mean, that's just how Pokemon's evolved over time. Every game just keeps getting better and better. You could also see that from the trailer footage of Legends ZA, that everything is just so incredibly vibrant and buttery smooth. This provides as a new minimum. What you see in Scarlet and Violet is just a jumping off point. I mean, it can only get better from here, and that's super exciting. Another thing that's come up in the Switch 2's version of Scarlet and Violet is that there are way more Pokemon spawning on screen, and that's just because the console can handle much more and handle rendering in these Pokemon from further distances is as opposed to the Switch one. So there's a big positive to this, and maybe one negative that I'm hoping they'll improve on. The positive here is that the world feels more alive, more real, more immersive. The negative is that they stepped away from that thing that happens in Legends Arceus where you get to hear the shiny noise, and I feel like shiny hunters now are constantly checking all of the spawning Pokemon just to see if there's a shiny one on screen, especially for the Pokemon that you can't really tell the difference because it's only a slight color variation. I really think the return of that noise or some overworld effect is going to be needed moving forward. Okay, next up is a game chat feature and its camera, which is obviously perfectly designed for Pokemon, but right now it's only used for Mario Kart. However, it looks graphically a bit skeptic from the trailer and some YouTubers that have used it. I hope that they come out with a better version of it soon that looks good and could run smooth games like Pokemon. However, going back to Mario Kart for a second, when you hit someone with a shell or an item, you get this little thing where it spins your icon. I could imagine a world in which in future Pokemon games, you have that union circle feature where all of your friends come into one world, but if you have game chat enabled, you can have your cameras above your head. Imagine doing things like max raid dens and max raid battles in future Pokemon games while streaming with your friends. Where I think this feature will really shine is how it gives people access to gaming communication apps like Discord that help people talk with their friends and share their screens as well as their faces. It also takes the burden off of people's PCs when it comes to sharing their camera and gameplay, as now people can do both of those directly from the console. But where I think it's going to really benefit people is with kids who maybe don't have access to Discord or their parents don't let them play online. I mean, just imagine for a second you were a kid and didn't know anything in a Pokemon game, and your friend who you have as a Nintendo Switch buddy is just like, oh, let me show you how to do something in game. Not only can you chat with them over camera, but they can also share their screen with you, which is super convenient. If you're lost in a game or just need help, they can just show you the way. If you don't have unfiltered access to the internet like adults do, I think young kids are going to really enjoy having access to this feature with their friends. Which, side note, I think kids is a majority of their demographic. It's important that these kids like Pokemon, because that helps this franchise keep growing and being a better place for not just those kids, but for all the Pokemon lifetimers like myself. But there's one more feature of the Switch 2 that I haven't talked about yet, and that's the mouse option, where you can use your controller on a flat surface and direct it like a cursor. How does this work for Pokemon, you may ask? Well, it just turns Pokemon PC boxes to real life, where you could drag and drop your Pokemon, just like you would do on a normal PC. Stuff like this in Pokemon is gonna be awesome, and I hope we see this implemented as soon as Pokemon Legends ZA. What's more is the throwback games on the system. Now we've got Gale of Darkness and Colosseum coming to the Switch 2 with the GameCube expansion. This means I finally have the ability to play these games because I missed them from that era. All of this in addition to Pokemon Legends ZA, as well as Generation 10 and Pokemon's 30th anniversary this year, got me super excited about the future of Pokemon.